Hi everyone, I'm Adrienne Nolan-Smith, the founder of WellBe, and I'm very excited to have today Latham Thomas, who is the founder of Mama Glow and a maternity lifestyle maven. She has really interesting things to say about the fertility, maternity, doula, pregnancy world. So I have a few questions. I'm going to get started. The first thing is, how did you get here? Did anything happen to you? I know you are a mother, but what happened in your life to sort of influence the decision to become who you are and start Mama Glow?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me as part of this experience. And I would say the things that influenced me in my path primarily were once I was pregnant with my son, I was calling doctor's offices and trying to get appointments, and it was really challenging to do. It was October that I made the phone call when I knew I was pregnant, and they had an appointment for me in May of the following year. And I was like, this is not cool. Like, it's gonna take that long for you to get me in. And so I was like, that's when I realized like something's like flawed. I have to help people navigate this process. And I ultimately went to deliver my son at Elizabeth Seton. I worked with midwives there, and it was the most incredible, gratifying experience. And I had this beautiful birth. My son was born at like 1:09 in the afternoon. I walked home at 6 o'clock in the evening carrying a baby. Like, this is just what, like, you're just gonna really let me leave? And so Mama Glow was really just like my own like gift to put like all of the resources that I had acquired, all the information, the knowledge, education. I see really my work to be not just there to celebrate the beautiful, glorious moments of like the baby coming and the mom and the baby just like connecting, but also like in the challenging moments where we have to make decisions, and for moms to feel and families to feel most informed so they can make these decisions so they could have the best outcome possible for that person.
From my research, it seems that maternity is the #2 reason behind chronic disease diagnosis, in which people are searching for integrative medicine and wellness on the internet. So why do you think it's so difficult to get pregnant, first of all, but also to get and stay well, you know, pre and postnatal?
When it comes to our fertility, there's multiple factors. I think that our country and our culture has an obsession with one, which is age. And that's a dominant factor, I think, in how we study the body and learn about fertility and the rhythmic cycles of the female body. The problem with that is when we look at age as a factor, as a single solitary factor, aside from lifestyle, location that you live in, environment, allergens, pollutants, toxicants, all kinds of things that you could just be like exposed to, and stress and perceived stress and stress management, all of these kind of things, right? Also part of the picture. And so you can't just be like, well, this person's 41, can't get pregnant. This person's 26, should be able to get pregnant. So biological age and chronological age are not concurrent, right? They don't run like this. Like, you can present like 20-something in a 40-something body, or what, So we have to think about like, the health of our cells and our systems, our organs. And then how we live. Lifestyle is a huge factor in fertility. So I think that because the medical system doesn't really fully acknowledge these things, because they want to acknowledge the things that they can manipulate, which obviously we have to use drugs. Like, for women to feel like they're on a trajectory in growth in a career, and then they want to start a family, it's like you got to start back from zero. This perceived like loss of accolades, of status, of like all the work that you put in right into your career. So because we've designed it in such a way that there's like, it's punitive for women to go start families, then they wait, right? And so then women are also competing in these really stressful situations that obviously have impact on their bodies, which is why a lot of people leave corporate America. And this impact that stress has also affects the fertility, because then the libido is lower because you're stressed, and then you don't want to have sex, and then also, you know, the stress hormones and the how it changes even your cervical mucus can like make it so that your body attacks sperm and things like this, right? So little tiny things that you wouldn't even think is a big deal are such a huge deal when it comes to like making a baby. So I think that we don't look at it in this holistic manner like you'll see people on the, you know, more integrative side doing, because I think the first thing that they say when you go into like an integrative space or a functional medicine, you know, doctor's going to be like, let me test your thyroid. Let's do a whole thyroid panel, like a full panel. Let's look at your blood and lipid profile. Like they're going to look at so many things to see where they can get diagnostic information that can tell a story. Whereas I feel like if you're going to a fertility doctor, they're not trying to tell a story. They have the story. They're giving you the story. Like, this is your story. This is what we're going to do, because I don't need to know the stuff that's going on, because this is what I'm going to give you to achieve this outcome. I don't really care that there's other stuff going on that we could probably change, or that may affect this process, or may not even let this process even unfold for you in the way it's supposed to, even though I'm saying that I have everything right here that can achieve that outcome. You could have impediments to that outcome. I'm not even interested in exploring that. That's what happens there, right? It's like, we have this, we're just gonna, you know, manipulate everything and do this. Hopefully it'll work. And so I think we're gonna see probably more and more a bigger push towards people taking charge of their health, but in a really proactive way, not a reactive way. And I think that that's what's happening sort of at this nexus point that we're in, whereas people before were sort of just like, okay, I'm here, like, tell me what to do, I'll just do what you're telling me. Now people are coming in like, I've read this, I have this information, I got these tests done, what do you think? Like, they're asking questions and creating more of a dialogue around how they can make choices, but also how they can use the information like a functional medicine doctor would and create a map for themselves, and then get other practitioners involved, even if they're going the route of getting IVF or IUI. A lot of people are like, you know what? I'm going to have a nutritionist so I have the best outcome possible. I'm going to do meditation, or I'm going to do yoga, or I'm going to, you know, acupuncture, all these things to help round out the process. And I think we're moving more in that trajectory where, and you'll also see a lot of the doctors too are co-signing some of these modalities, like where they were like, they didn't want people to before, but they're seeing that like a lot of people are getting results, and sometimes not even completing their cycles, because they'll be in between cycles and get pregnant because they've been doing acupuncture.
Periods.
Yes.
So I have a number of friends who, including myself, have had experiences where your period disappears. Mm-hmm. Mine was about 2 years, and in college, and I have friends who haven't had a natural period in years, and they just take, you know, birth control pills to get a fake one. And how does that all play into, I think it's quite connected to fertility. And so what would you advise, you know, girls in their, you know, teens and early 20s and stuff to do if they don't get a natural period, to ensure that, you know, they aren't shocked by infertility when they're 30 and they want to be pregnant?
Yes. Reaction or a consequence of that, whether it's like immediate or down the line. So depending on the half-life of the chemical, right? So if it's like maybe you're doing it for like 5 years, as you let the hormones leave your system, it takes time. Like, it breaks down over time, and it depends, each drug is very different. But also, outside of that, your brain gets very used to what's in the bloodstream. It just sort of like, it doesn't have to work. So if you have a synthetic, you know, process happening whereby you, like you said, getting your fake period, where your body's not like actually having to do the work, then when you stop, like your brain has to kick in and now do these things that it wasn't doing for like 5-10 years, whatever. Some people get pregnant right away. Other people, there's challenges because if you started out already with hormonal imbalance, which most people don't know if they have or not when they get on birth control, if you already have an imbalance, it's not getting corrected while you're on birth control, right? And so I think that one of the things that's so important is when girls are getting their periods, if they're painful or symptomatic, giving them tips and tools, helping them to, embrace self-care, hydrate, eat well, because the wrong foods can make you have like a bad period, pushing too hard, too much exercise, like things that stress the body during the cycle are things that we should be looking at. And then we expect teenage girls to go hard in their sports and activities when they're bleeding. And we need to give people time to rest. I think, look at your period too. Is it scanty? Is it clotty? Is it painful? These are things, this is again, it's information. And it's like the diagnostics that come up in your life, right? So you can see wow, it's I'm not bleeding that much. What's this? That's why pads are great, because you can see what's coming, and you can see if your blood changes in color and consistency, flow. And that's really important. If you, and I'm not against tampon use, I use them as well, but I think if you're gonna put something inside your body, it should be organic, it should be clean. You shouldn't just be putting anything in your body. And now, cotton, because it's not a food, they can spray anything. They can spray with anything. And since it's a non-food, when they, and it's one of those things that pests love, they spray it with everything. So when you get that and concentrate, and then you put that inside of you, you're just exposing yourself to more toxins because of the mucosa lining of the vagina. It upticks into your bloodstream right away. And so then your body has to then now try to process that out of your system as well. So a doula is a maternity healthcare practitioner who works with couples and mothers to support them through the birth process. So they provide education, advocacy support, and hands-on support in the actual labor experience. They're in the room with you when you deliver. There's also postpartum doulas that help moms after labor. So they're completely different from midwives who deliver babies like obstetricians do. They're more of emotional and psychological support for expectant new moms.
I'm going to spout off a couple of statistics around doula use in the U.S.
Sure.
And you tell me what you think about them. So I read an NPR article recently published in 2016 that suggests that offering women the support of a certified doula could save Medicaid and perhaps private insurance real money nearly $1,000 per birth by reducing cesarean sections and preterm births. Cesarean sections, about a third of all U.S. births, cost about twice as much as a vaginal birth.
Yep.
And 1 in 10 U.S. infants born preterm, so before 37 weeks, incur medical costs 10 times greater than those of full-term infants. Other research has shown more satisfaction from mothers and better newborn APGAR scores, which are a measure of baby's condition at birth, among mothers who use doula care. It's the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists said that guidelines for safe prevention of cesarean births say doula care is probably underutilized. And only 15% of mothers eligible for Medicaid-covered doula services actually use them. And that overall, only about 3% of women in the U.S., although this was 2006, so it may have increased since then, but only 3% of women said they actually used a doula during childbirth. So given all of these, reputable organizations and publications that are saying doula birth saves money, improves the mother-baby experience, improves health outcomes, why is it so underutilized? Why isn't it the standard of care?
There are real impediments to infiltrating a system that is designed to sort of put money first, as well as put protections around themselves, but also put money first. So if we know that you could save money, You could, reduce cesareans, all these things. Like, I mean, sounds amazing. But then when it's like, okay, well, let's roll out a program. Whoa, right? It's like now you're like talking about people's livelihoods if they're used to like, doing maybe 20, surgical deliveries a month or more. Like Mama Glow comes in with a client and works with the hospital in that way rather than working in the hospital. I would love to see more inside of the hospital. Here's a doula practitioner, company that we work with, and then we're going to staff everyone. That would be amazing. There would be the safety net of the insurance within the hospital. But I just think that there's still this idea also that like, you're a layperson, we're the expert, we're the doctor, it's our show. There's also that too. So I think it's layered, but I also think on the upside of that so many women are using doulas. And so with the stats from 2006 to 2017, with popular culture sort of being immersed in this doula experience, with also Instagram and social and all these places that you can go to see kind of a different side of what birth has been presented to us, I think people have become more and more interested. And there's also more and more doulas that are trained right now than before. Now it's about creating infrastructure that supports these people, their talents, skill sets, information, and allowing them to also still be a liaison between the client and their experience and the doctor and the sort of hospital experience. We have to figure out a way to do that this group maintains like who they are while working with them and working with them. And so they become like a really great bridge.
As somebody who hasn't been pregnant, I always thought of prenatal yoga as, you can't really do extreme exercise. So the only exercise you can really do is yoga. But I feel like that was the wrong thought process. It's really that the actual act of yoga has all these great benefits to the actual pregnancy besides just a way to move your body.
Right.
And so can you talk about that a little bit, what those are?
Yeah. So I came to prenatal yoga through my own experience in pregnancy, going to classes around the city that were super boring. And like, I was just, basically it was like prenatal nap time, I called it. And I would go and be like, okay, another child's pose, great. And I'd be like looking around the room, like, is anybody else like ready to go and like do something, like just ready to jog or something? This is like boring. So I was like, okay, I have to do something. I would go to regular classes and just modify. And I was like, I really want to be in community. And so then I was like, I'm going to develop like, my own like sequence that's like challenging and actually meets the demands of labor and new motherhood, like helps support moms on this journey. And it's prenatal and postnatal as well, but we really work to help moms develop strength and flexibility, an understanding of the body and the mechanism of labor and birth, but also the changing prenatal body and how to support it best. And when they come to class, there's a combination of yoga, martial arts, dance technique, that we incorporate, as well as sound. There's also this kind of like thing that we do, like waves, to kind of like work out what's happening in the brain, which when you walk into a room, you're in like a thinking state, and we want to put people in more like a trance-like state. So we work on affecting the brain too, which is something that we want to do in the labor. As we know, deep breathing and meditation or mindfulness is also really helpful at any stage in your life. And obviously, if you are pregnant, that's 2 lives, or if there's multiples, that's multiple lives that you're affecting, because that mom is now breathing and accessing happy hormones and sending that through her bloodstream and passing that to her baby instead of stress hormones, right? So, I think it's one thing that is really beneficial that we should all like definitely engage in during pregnancy.
What would you say would be, as if there's just one, but the one major change that you would sort of tell people to try to work on and get involved with, so changing a bit of the system level?
You still hear these stories, horrifying and good ones, but mostly horrible ones, about how they were handled by healthcare, things that were said to them, incorrectly, incorrect information, attitude, or how something, just whatever it is, it's like you're paying for an experience and then someone gives you a bad one and then they don't have to get held accountable. We have to have accountability around the birth process. It can't just be like, oh, well, that's this doctor and it's his. No, it's you're paying for it. You're like tiptoeing around their energy or their attitude, and it's not right. Like, you should be able to go in and be like, this is what I desire. This is really what I need. These are my, my preferences. Let's go over what that looks like. I prefer birth preferences over a birth plan because, plans go awry, but preferences I think are really good so that they know where you're headed on this trip, and then you also know where you want to be headed, and whatever happens along the way, we deal with, but let's at least sit down and take that seriously instead of oh, okay, great, your birth plan. No, you should really want to know how I'd like this to go because I'm paying for it. We see real outcomes when people are having multiple cesarean sections in the same area and having these crazy ruptures when they're in flight and having to be emergency landed for emergency surgery because of, complications. We cannot just stitch people open for no reason. Or cut people open and stitch them, botched for no reason. We have to do this the right way. We have to make sure that cesareans are happening because they are life-saving. We have to make sure that we don't push and peddle drugs onto women who come in with a specific the mindset that they want to have a natural birth. We should honor their wishes unless there's a medical reason otherwise. I think that we should also have the mandatory trainings around bedside manner, around, patient rights, around, any drugs that are being used. People should have to take a course, and a weekend course, and understand what is going to be pumped into their bloodstream, what is going in that IV, what does the entire process entail, and what am I consenting to when I'm in a vulnerable state. And it's a bunch of pages too, and you just start signaturing. No, you shouldn't be able to signature that paper until you took that course. And there should be a little thing that somebody says, oh, she didn't take the course, so she's not going to be offered these things whether she wants it or not, because she didn't take the education. You have to know. In Holland, you take a class before you get an epidural. We have to do things like this. And this is responsible. This is not about companies not making money. This is about companies being responsible and doctors being responsible and reporting all of the proposed and possible side effects, and as well as the hopefully it doesn't work, go that direction for people, but people have to know, they have to be educated. So I think education is really key. We have to push for that on a national level, and that we have to create some sort of protections around that and boundaries around the client experience so that they move through it and have less of these mishaps, because it's not fair for somebody to walk in one way, having been totally healthy, and have a completely different outcome because of someone's whims or their vacation schedule. I love the way that you all philosophize around healthcare being everyday choices, because it so is. And I think that people have to start thinking that way. So I love that this is just the brand ethos and just what you breathe and live. And I want to also say, to the point of pregnancy, that we're born with all of our eggs. So we're born with our daughters, our granddaughters, our great-granddaughters, our sons. We're born with them inside of us. And so when we make these choices daily, right, to stay up to 3 a.m. and drink and eat pizza and party and whatever it is that we're doing, we're not saying I don't want people to think they can't live that way, but we don't want to do that every day. We need to know that we're making a choice, that there are other options and other directions that we can go to take charge of our health. And so having a fun night out or whatever is fine, but ultimately most of our days should be us making healthy choices. Something I do every day. I wake up, I do something reflective, whether that's meditation or moving my body. I take my time. I don't like rushing. And I think that that's really key, because so many of us start off in stress mode because we woke up late. So then the stress hormones are hey, what else do I do? I think, eating well, I think is really key. I do something called phone fasting, where I just don't go on social media, don't, use devices, which I think is really important because of how, as you know, it's like modulating our internal experiences, whether that's like our mental health and throwing it off, or like our emotional health, just feeling these waves of energy by just looking at pictures and captions. A big thing that I do also is with scheduling is I schedule around my cycle. I map that out, and everything that I have to do that takes a lot of energy and outward expression, I don't do then. And then the things that I need to do that are like more social and require me to be more extrovertive, I'll do like when I'm ovulating. So I just wait, for the periods that are more fruitful for me in my body and work for me in my rhythms. And so I think that's really helpful for me because I don't feel depleted usually. The only times I feel depleted is usually if I've had to do like 24 hours with a birth or something like that. But outside of that, my own mapping of my days always have breaks. I always take time to go outside, to eat away from my desk and eat in fresh air. In the gardening, like we have this garden that we started to work with downtown, and so I like to get my feet dirty and be outside and do that, or go to the beach, things like that, where I can just be at nature, because I'm from California, so we got to be outside.